Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Nickerson, and I'm a director here at Old Line Government Affairs, and we welcome you to another edition of Online with Old Line. For this edition, I'm especially excited to introduce Delegate Kathy Szeliga because she is my delegate representing District 7 in both Baltimore and Harford counties. Welcome, Delegate Szeliga, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Oh, thanks so much. I love the opportunity. Thank you.
So you have such a storied political history that in my introduction, I'm going to focus mainly on that, but I would love it if, as we move forward, you'd kind of pepper in some other personal stuff. And you've just got a really fascinating political background, I think. So Delegate Szeliga was first elected in 2010 to the Maryland General Assembly. And she currently serves on the Health and Government Operations Committee, but she has also served on the Appropriations Committee and the Environment and Transportation Committee. In 2006, Delegate Szeliga successfully triumphed over a crowded field of 14 candidates to be the Republican nominee for the U.S. Senate. Although she was unsuccessful in the general election, Delegate Szeliga actually won 18 of the 23 counties in the state and received over almost 1 million votes, and the second highest votes for a Republican in the history of the state, which is an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, I think it was the highest until Governor Hogan was reelected.
Was it? Oh, that's great. That's good to know. So in her senatorial bid, she actually outperformed the presidential candidate statewide, which is the first time a Senate candidate has done that in recent history. And maybe the only time. Did the governor also take that from you?
No, because he runs not in the presidential year. So generally, top of the ticket drives the rest of the ticket. And there are people, as you know, that will show up and vote for president and just leave.
That is so true.
For anyone else. So, the top of the ticket usually outperforms everybody else below that.
That is true. So in 2014, you teamed up with Delegate Nick Kipke to organize a highly effective campaign effort that successfully helped elect the largest number of GOP representatives to the Maryland House of Delegates in the history of the state. Additionally, Delegate Szeliga has received many prestigious awards, including but not limited to Maryland's Top 100 Women, Baltimore Sun's Women to Watch, 2014 Legislator of the Year from the Maryland Society of Anesthesiologists, a Towson University Distinguished Alumni Award in 2017. And on the personal side, Delegate Szeliga has been married for over 38 years to Mark, and they have 2 married sons and 2 granddaughters. And the 2 of them started a general contracting business 32 years ago, where they still work together. And I think that in itself is a huge accomplishment. So Delegate Szeliga, let's get us rolling. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the district that you represent?
Yeah, again, thanks for this opportunity to visit with you. And I do have a diverse background. I'm a wife, a mom, a grandmom, small business owner. I'm a former educator. I used to teach in Baltimore City Public Schools. Was sub in Baltimore County. And, I do have that unusual last name, Szeliga. And I remember when I was a substitute teacher, right up on the board, Mrs. Szeliga. And the kids would look at me like they just call me teacher all day long. So I had to come up with something. So I was like, my name is Mrs. Szeliga. And generally they would get that right. But I always tell people, look, if you can't remember how to say Szeliga, just call me Kathy. I've been very involved in my church, taught Sunday school. I was a youth sports coach for many years. And part of the reason that I ran for office was I had been working for then State Senator Andy Harris, who's now Congressman Andy Harris. I was working in his state Senate office as the chief of staff. And I looked around and I noticed there weren't enough lawmakers that had practical backgrounds, that had signed the front of a paycheck, which, young people are like, what do you mean signed the front of a paycheck? It's direct deposited. But, I think they know what I mean. And who had taught in a classroom. Maybe people have visited with back to school night or something, but actually taught in the classroom, signed a paycheck. Those were the things that my husband and I did foster care. We were foster care parents for about 3 years in Baltimore City as well. And all of those experiences together, I think, equipped me to want to run in the first place, and then, to run successfully and then hold office for the last 10 years.
So it was your passion just to help people that spurred you running for office?
Yeah, absolutely. That it is to help people. And that would actually be what I would feel is my number one accomplishment as a legislator, is really being able to help people. I mean, we've had hundreds of people struggling with unemployment over the last year and a half, and
right.
Heartbreaking stories. And we've been able to help so many of them. Other stories with the MBA, somebody just completely frustrated, and, we're able to break through with that. And a quick little anecdotal story. Early on when I was first elected, maybe year 1 or 2, I always go to the Watermen's Caucus because my district is Middle River and up into Harford County. And we do have watermen in Baltimore County, even though, most people think of that as the shore. And the oystermen were having to go to the DNR office to get a tag. Every bushel that they harvest has to have a tag on it that tracks where these oysters go. It was so backwards. They would have to leave the water, go to an office, get these tags, take them out on the water the next day. Well, the DNR kept running out of tags, literally running out of a piece of paper. And without a bill, which is the best way to solve problems without creating new laws, we were able to get DNR to transform their entire program to allow watermen to print these at home.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, these are the kind of small stories, which, if you're not a waterman and you're like, oh, okay, but, it's just kind of symptomatic of other things that I've been able to accomplish in my 10 years here, just helping solve problems. That's very gratifying.
Well, and having worked at one time in a congressman's office as well, that's one of the things that a congressman's staff has to focus on regularly. So I bet you got a lot of experience doing that, working for your congress.
Yeah, well, I actually, Andy was a state senator before he was a congressman. I haven't worked in his congressional office, but certainly, he has great people in the congressional office that do a great job. Actually, the head of Andy Harris's congressional constituent services office worked with me in Annapolis in his state senate office, and she's amazing. Liz Linsky's really fantastic. But yes, certainly being equipped to know how to solve those problems, was really helpful.
Absolutely. So let me ask you this, since you had experience prior to running for office of working in a Senate office, how did your expectations once you got elected to office yourself, how did those differ, and how were they, was there anything surprising to you when you got into office and started to actually, doing the work yourself?
Yeah, my expectations were pretty realistic. Just having worked in the Senate and, seeing how the process works and on session, out of session, that kind of thing. But there's nothing like being the person that has to push the button when you vote, right? There's, when you're the staffer, you're, maybe me full of vim and vigor and like, oh, we've got to do this. And, when you're the person that's voting yes or no and doing those things, it certainly is different. And it's, gives you a real sense of responsibility and, just the seriousness of the job. But I do remember one time, as a staffer, we would listen to session. Now you can watch it, but back then we would all listen while they were in session. So you miss all this physical cues, all the nonverbal cues that were going on. And so probably my first week or two in session in the House of Delegates, a particular person got up and started, I'll say, bloviating, and a third of the people in the House chamber got up and left the floor to go to the bathroom, get a drink of water, whatever. And I'm like, wow, so, when you hear it, you hear one thing, but you're missing what's going on on the House floor. And I remember thinking, don't be that person.
Right, exactly.
Be the person that stands up and nobody wants to hear what you have to say.
And how COVID has changed things, because now there's actually video, and now your constituents too can watch. So they can see can't see the entire floor at one point, but they can see who's on the floor and who's not on the floor and who's paying attention and who's not. So,
and that I'm glad you mentioned that, because that probably from a legislative standpoint is my proudest accomplishment. I got cameras put on the House floor before COVID. I worked very hard, I think 3 or 4 years in a row. I brought back a transparency bill to make sure that we had cameras. There were only 7 states at that point that hadn't installed video cameras on the House floor. So, fortunately, Speaker Mike Bush did it again without a bill, which I was more than thrilled to not need another law. But we got those videos on the House floor, and thank goodness before COVID hit, because it certainly made the transition a little bit easier, and it certainly was well overdue.
It absolutely did. I can't even imagine what would have happened if those cameras weren't there this past session.
Yeah.
So you've talked about a couple things that you're really proud of. Is there any one piece of legislation or, anything that you're really I'm so glad I did this?
Yeah, it would probably be the video cameras on the floor, because, it really transformed. There were concerns that people would bloviate, right? That
right.
Get up and speechify and take over. And, we've had cameras in our committee rooms for quite a few years. So, and people don't do that. You even kind of forget that they're there. But I think there will be people that do that, but it is so important for the public to have access to what's going on. There are 141 delegates. And if you don't know whose voice is who, if you were just listening at home, you would be completely lost.
Right.
This is very helpful. And I think it brings certainly a lot of accountability.
So here's a question that kind of comes from that conversation. Prior to COVID, were these still out there? Were the videos still out there on YouTube or some kind of platform that the general public could see? Or was that, caused by COVID? And if so, do you think that'll stick around?
Yeah, the videos are in committee. They're all archived on the state General Assembly website, which I believe is a really good website and gives people access to all the bills, daily agendas, previous history of things that have gone on, fiscal notes. It's really good. But the actual video on the floor was non-existent. There wasn't any. There was just an audio recording. So again, with 141 people talking and the speaker, for people who have never listened, we aren't called by our first name on the floor. So the speaker would say to me, I recognize the delegate from Baltimore and Harford counties, or Baltimore County or Harford County. Sometimes, they'll call me one of the 3 and look at me, and I know that she means now it's my turn to talk. I'll recognize the gentleman from Frederick County. Well, for the average citizen, you have no idea who she now, Adrian, Speaker Jones is talking about, or previous Bush. So, it's really brought us into the 21st century. So overdue. Those videos are archived. We actually had a rule that we weren't allowed to take video of each other on the floor. So that's kind of changed. We're still, with decorum, you're not supposed to take unflattering photos or videos of your colleagues. Some people, might be tempted to do that for political purposes, but it really is frowned upon. And I haven't seen people do that. So, hopefully that will continue. But I just, it was time, and I hope the public will access all that information, because they should know and want to know what's going on with their state lawmakers in Annapolis.
And it does make a difference actually watching what is said and the reactions of people in the room. And it makes a huge difference to really understand an issue and every side of the issue. And absolutely. So what policy initiatives do you see in your future? What do you want to accomplish next?
Well, I really hope that Maryland can modernize once again, just like with, dragging them into the 21st century with video of the House floor. I really hope that we can transform education in Maryland. It's always a top priority for citizens that live in the state. We spend per pupil one of the highest amounts in the entire country. And, so taxpayers have made a commitment and lawmakers have made a commitment to education. But we really need to modernize the way we do things. And virtual learning doesn't work for everyone. If there's one thing of many that we learned with COVID, it's that most kids cannot learn virtually, but there are some kids that really thrived under this virtual environment. And again, I'll say, I think there are 30 states across the country that have a virtual learning opportunity for students in that state as part of the public school. So I put a bill in last year to allow every county in our state through the current public school system. So it's not a charter or a voucher or something that the teachers union, would get their, throw others up and say, oh, you're competing with us. Just, Baltimore County could enter into an RFP, put out an RFP and enter into a contract with a company that currently provides virtual learning. Mm-hmm. And this is learning built to be delivered virtually, not what we did in the last year and a half, which was make kids learn on a Zoom call. That's not what virtual learning is. So, we have Pearson Education located in Columbia, Maryland. Their headquarters is in our state. Mm-hmm. For this and many other states across the country, but it's not available here in Maryland unless you pay for it privately. So I'm really hoping that, we can learn some things from COVID. And one of the things we can do is allow families and students an opportunity to do that through their public school. So I'll be pushing for that next year again, really working to try to bring them into the 21st century.
Well, I can tell you as the mother of 2 children who are in Baltimore County schools, and they're in good schools, we struggled with the virtual learning thing. And you're right, I had one child that kind of thrived in it and one child that went the opposite direction. And it was challenging to say the least.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Parents across our state. Oh, my heart goes out to you. My kids are grown and my grandkids, fortunately, go to a little private community school that was open the entire time. They didn't.
Oh, that's great.
School. So that was really fortunate for my grandkids, but most families really struggled with virtual learning. But again, they were learning on a Zoom call, which is not really virtual learning. But you have kids we have a program, Home and Hospital, for kids that are sick and can't go to school, other family situations where this kind of opportunity would really work for them. And there's no reason the public schools can't offer it.
I could not agree more. So to wrap things up, tell us one unique thing or fun fact about you.
Well, I think, you guys are posting up my motorcycle picture. I am a motorcycle enthusiast, and it's a hobby. I love traveling and I love getting out on my motorcycle. But the other fun fact about me is my husband and I were house sitters for Jimmy Buffett. Oh gosh, maybe 30 years ago. We used to live in Colorado before we moved to Baltimore, and there was an ad in the Aspen Times. We answered the ad and we got hired, and they said, hey, by the way, you're house sitting for Jimmy Buffett. So we're like, burger in paradise. Yes.
How old were you when you got that job?
I was 24. I think my husband was 24, 25, mid-20s. And actually,
fantastic.
Our son, who was born while we, lived in Jimmy's house. We had a number of house sitting opportunities before that, but never for a star like Jimmy Buffett. Glenn Fry from the Eagles was our next door neighbor. Goldie Hawn lived up the street. I, of course, didn't know Goldie, but, Glenn Fry's wife came over all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the lifestyles of the rich and famous when you live in Aspen.
And how long did you live there?
We lived there for about 7 years. skied and camped and hiked and biked and did all the fun, outdoor activities that people who live in the mountains love. And then we moved to Baltimore to raise our family.
That's really fun. I love it. So thank you, Delegate Szeliga. I appreciate you take the time to speak with us today. And we look forward to having opportunities to work with you in the future.
Oh, me too. Well, thanks for this opportunity. It's so great for, people to realize, hey, we're regular, normal folks. And, I love to hear from constituents, and non-constituents reach out to me all the time. So I hope I see you out maybe at Inverness or one of the local breweries.
Absolutely.
District, Falling Branch. We could go down the list of all the great places to.
Big Truck.
Yeah, Big Truck. Exactly.
Inverness is actually very close to my house, so I'm there quite often, and it's a really nice place to take my kids. They take a soccer ball and play games. And
yeah, it's one of my favorite places to ride my motorcycle. It's just beautiful up there, and their beer is fantastic.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. And for more conversations with legislators and more online with Old Line, please visit oldlinelobbying.com.